All right, here we go. Here we go. You ready? I'm ready. Okay. Fast food seafood chain Red Lobster has filed for bankruptcy protection. 30,000 employees in the United States are affected because many of the 500 restaurants are now forced to close. Red Lobster executives are blaming the endless shrimp. For $20, customers could eat all the shrimp they wanted, and executives claim that's what broke the bank. The truth is the executives broke the bank. It wasn't customers feasting on shrimp. It was private equity feasting on capitalism. Back in 2014, Red Lobster was sold to the private equity firm of Golden Gate Capital, which paid for most of that purchase by selling off all of Red Lobster's real estate. You know, the land upon which the restaurants all sat. They sold off all the real estate to American Realty Capital Properties, and then Red Lobster leased the property back from them. That is a certain road to financial ruin for chain restaurants. McDonald's early on discovered the benefit to owning the land underneath where they built their franchises. That land serves as a safety net, allowing the company to survive economic downturns. If an individual restaurant starts to suffer, the chain can take a mortgage out against the land to get through the rough patches. The private equity firm that bought Red Lobster, a perfectly good company, the private equity firm that bought it sold off all the land to pay for the purchase of Red Lobster. This used to be illegal. Meanwhile, the private equity fund pays itself huge fees, and Red Lobster is suddenly a tenant, renting all its restaurants. The rent eventually became unaffordable. So, as is always the case when private equity buys a perfectly good company, they have to declare bankruptcy. The business model for private equity is literally looting and pillaging a perfectly good company. Find a business that's either profitable or barely profitable or losing a little money, and then borrow money to purchase it. Then pay down the debt you accrued to purchase it by transferring that debt on to the newly purchased company's balance sheets and start servicing that debt by selling off pieces of the newly purchased company bit by bit. It used to be illegal. As the private equity firm is doing this to Red Lobster, they're paying themselves enormous fees, literally gutting the company by pocketing any of the cash they find sitting around Red Lobster, and that places it into further debt. And then, when the private equity firm is unable to service that debt, the newly purchased company declares bankruptcy. Not the private equity firm, the company they bought, Red Lobster, declares bankruptcy, starts closing all the restaurants, fires all the workers, and blames the endless shrimp. This is not capitalism. This is a private equity firm using money it already has to borrow money it doesn't have. And then, with that borrowed money, they attack a perfectly fine company like Red Lobster. They purchase it, and they put the debt onto the newly purchased company's balance sheets while pocketing any cash they find, and then they sell off the real estate. They pocket some of the profits from the sale of the real estate, and then they always declare bankruptcy. There used to be laws to prevent companies like Mitt Romney's Bain Capital from doing this. But tell me again how it was the endless shrimp that brought down Red Lobster. It used to be against the law. Without regulation, corporations will devour our economy and take capitalism down with it. We saw it happen in 2008 with our unregulated banks that literally destroyed capitalism. Capitalism died in 2008 because an unregulated banking system destroyed it. Never forget that capitalism died in 2008 and had to be bailed out by the United States Congress, as well as our Federal Reserve and central banks throughout the world, because the banking industry, unregulated, killed capitalism. And we forgot that lesson within months as the banks took our money, the taxpayers' money, and gave themselves bonuses. Within weeks after being bailed out, they gave themselves bonuses and then hired lobbyists to go to Washington and weaken Dodd-Frank, which was supposed to be the legislation that added new safeguards to protect us from another death blow to capitalism. Corporations left to their own devices will kill capitalism and our planet. They're doing it. Hyperphagia, otherwise known as Prader-Willi syndrome, is a disease where no matter how much the patient eats, they never feel full. That's what corporate America suffers from. No matter how much they devour, it's never enough. But blame the endless shrimp. Tell us how Red Lobster went bankrupt because it was the customers who suffered from hyperphagia. No, it was the private equity firm that bought Red Lobster that suffered from hyperphagia. This is why we need an environmental protection agency to keep us from getting swallowed, eaten whole by the fossil fuel industry. And this is also why the fossil fuel industry wants to destroy the EPA, because the fossil fuel industry suffers from hyperphagia and wants to keep sucking the ground dry until they kill all of us, including themselves, because no matter how much they devour, it's never enough. Earlier in the year, according to the Washington Post, Donald Trump, who was eating himself sick until he went on Ozempic, Donald Trump, according to the Washington Post, earlier this year told a meeting of fossil fuel executives they needed to donate $1 billion to his campaign. And in return, Trump promised, if elected, to dismantle all of Joe Biden's legislation that has been facilitating America's switch to alternative energy. You know, we forget, but making promises like that to oil executives is illegal. For any other candidate, this would be grounds for dropping out of the race, not Trump. Meanwhile, the EPA is saving lives. Benzene causes leukemia and blood cancer, and it's what oil refineries spew into the air when they're left unregulated. The Environmental Integrity Project, an independent watchdog that monitors EPA data, reports that an Obama-era rule requiring oil refineries to limit benzene emissions has dramatically reduced the amount of benzene released into the atmosphere. Now, oil refineries are usually built near disadvantaged communities, and that creates cancer clusters, especially among children of color. This Obama-era ruling is an example of what good government can accomplish. It's also why Republicans want bad government. Bad government means more profits for the people who are killing us. Earlier in the month, the Biden administration announced marijuana would go from being listed as a Schedule I drug, right up there with heroin or fentanyl, down to a Schedule III, thereby making it much harder for state and local police to justify arresting innocent civilians for possession. And now, the New York Times reports that pot has become America's top drug, topping alcohol for the first time ever. According to a 40-year study conducted by Carnegie Mellon University, Americans are now more likely to smoke a joint than pour a drink. According to this study, right now, America has 14.7 million daily drinkers, as opposed to 17.7 million daily pot smokers. Some research suggests increased marijuana use decreases sales of beer, but leaves harder spirits untouched. So people are still buying their scotch and whiskey, but they're not drinking as much beer. One bud for a different type of bud. For those of you who think switching from alcohol to pot might make for a calmer, perhaps more rational and enlightened electorate, I need not remind you that Jimmy Dore and Joe Rogan smoke a lot of pot, and so do their listeners. When I was young, the cool kids smoked pot. Now it's a lot of very violent and dangerous self-styled libertarians like Jimmy Dore and Joe Rogan who don't read. By the way, I'll talk more about Donald Trump's appearance at the Libertarian Convention on tomorrow's show. It's been 2 years since an 18-year-old gunman opened fire inside an Uvalde, Texas elementary school, killing 19 students and 2 teachers. This week, 2 civil lawsuits were filed on behalf of the survivors and families of the victims against Daniels Defense, the manufacturer of the AR-15 used in that slaughter. Attorney Josh Koskoff, who recently won a lawsuit against Alex Jones on behalf of the Sandy Hook families, announced this lawsuit, as well as another lawsuit filed against Meta, the parent company of Instagram, and a lawsuit against Activision, which produces Call of Duty, a video game where players use virtual high-powered assault weapons to shoot at each other. I didn't allow this in my house with any of my kids. Have you seen Call of Duty? In the complaint, the attorney Koskoff writes, quote, over the past 15 years, 2 of America's largest technology companies, the defendants, in this case, Activision, which produces Call of Duty, and Meta, which owns Instagram, these 2 companies have partnered with the firearms industry in a scheme that makes the Joe Campbell campaign look laughably harmless, even quaint. Well, I wish him well, and of course, the people of Uvalde. Now, you can blame Call of Duty, you can blame Instagram, but in the end, Uvalde is this guy's fault, Marty Daniels, the owner of Daniels Defense, who isn't satisfied selling his AR-15s just to the Pentagon. He needs to sell more. His hyperphagia prevents him from knowing, hey, you know what? I sold enough weapons to the military. So Marty Daniels of Daniels Defense works with Elise Stefanik's husband to find new markets for his AR-15s. This is Republican Elise Stefanik. She's on Trump's shortlist to be vice president, and she's married to this monster, Matthew Manda, who works as the manager of public affairs for the National Shooting Sports Foundation. That's a trade association for firearms manufacturers. It's his job to work with people like Marty Daniels to find new markets for AR-15s. Matthew Manda, Elise Stefanik's husband, wakes up every morning, goes to work, and says, how can I help Marty Daniels sell more AR-15s to young, disgruntled, unhappy white males in their early 20s? So I don't think it's the video games. I don't think it's Instagram. I don't think it's mental illness. We know it's not mental illness. Active shooters do not fit the qualification, the standard. They don't meet the threshold for mental illness. Uvalde happened because Elise Stefanik's husband, Matthew Manda, works with people like Marty Daniels from Daniels Defense, and they get up every morning and talk on the phone to find new ways, to find new people to sell AR-15s to. Because selling AR-15s to our Pentagon doesn't make them rich enough. Now, President Biden could sign an executive order today and say, make a choice, Marty Daniels. You either sell your AR-15s to the Pentagon or you sell them to consumers. You can't do both. That's what Joe Biden could do today. Of course, it would be challenged in the Supreme Court. This is the mop-up for May 26, 2024. Thank you for finding me. I'm David Feldman in New York City. If you really want to help me out, please share this episode. I'm wearing a new shirt and it's bothering me. If you really want to help me out, please share this episode with your friends. And remember, hit the like button so I remain in your feed. That's the best way for these episodes to pop up when they happen. Some of you have written to me asking why they keep missing some episodes when the show is live, and you need to subscribe to my channel, and you need to hit the notifications button, and you need to hit the like button to guarantee that you really don't have to work to find me. But if you don't want to hit the like button or subscribe or hit the notification button, then if you're looking for me, go to my channel or my website to find the latest episode of this program. If you would like a free transcript of today's episode or previous transcripts of previous episodes, go to shopdavidfeldman.com and hit the transcript menu. We also have a menu there to watch the latest episodes. So you can watch previous episodes by going to shopdavidfeldman.com or davidfeldmanshow.com. The CNN debate between Donald Trump and Joe Biden is still on for June 27th. I gotta say, I saw Trump speak at the Libertarian Convention. He was welcoming the hecklers and the boos. He is a formidable opponent. I think his speech before the Libertarians, where they booed and heckled him, unfortunately, I think that's going to help him. I'll play the clip on tomorrow's show. Well, more than 73 million people watched the first debate between Trump and Biden 4 years ago. The latest national polling shows Biden and Trump in a statistical dead heat. I'm thinking of hosting a watch party on Zoom for the debate. We'll watch it, and then after the debate, I'll record an audio episode of my audio podcast, and I'll take calls from people in the Zoom room. This will only be on Zoom, not YouTube. There will be no video involved. If you attend the Zoom event, you'll only see me and the debate. And then after the debate, I will take your calls via Zoom. I'll also give out a phone number in case you want to attend via phone and not through Zoom. I'm not sure I'm doing this. I'm thinking of doing this. If you promise to raise your hand and talk, I'm more likely to do this. You won't be on video. It's purely audio. Nobody will see you during the Zoom meeting. Nobody's going to see you. And if you raise your hand to talk and I call on you, nobody's going to see you. We'll have an audio conversation. You'll see me, but we'll have an audio conversation that I will then turn into an audio podcast. By the way, this is an audio podcast, so remember to download me wherever you get your audio. Let me know if you're interested. I'm going to charge a little something to keep the trolls out. If you can't afford to come, let me know and I'll let you in for free. And I need you to tell me that you'll raise your hand and talk to me. I don't need all of you to pull this off, but I need at least 10 of you to raise your hand so you can be heard. It won't be worth doing if the people attending don't want to talk to me. A lot of the joy of these meetings in the past has been the chat room and the Q&A and everybody getting to know one another. But I end up sounding ridiculous if nobody raises their hand to talk to me. In the past, it was more about the community than me, and that's fine. But if I'm going to do an audio podcast, I need you to raise your hand and talk. So let me know in the comments section if I can get assurances that you'll raise your hand and talk. At least some of you, I'll be more likely to do this. Let me know in the comments section or hit me up over at my website. Shocking news this week. Shocking! Nikki Haley officially endorsed Donald Trump. I just couldn't believe it. Did anyone for 1 second think she wouldn't? I am a fool, however. I gave her way too much credit. I figure she would at least have the decency to wait until all the primaries were over before she endorsed him, especially since she was racking up those protest votes, sometimes as high as 20% in some primaries. But in the end, like all Republicans, she chickened out because all Republicans are chicken shit. The only difference between Nikki Haley and Trump was style. When it comes down to the actual substance of what she would deliver, well, just like Donald Trump, Nikki Haley is a bagman for the donor class. I suspect if she got elected, she'd be less deferential to Putin, probably a little more responsible when it comes to foreign affairs. I will give her that. But on everything else, Nikki Haley was a carbon copy of Donald Trump. From the get-go, Nikki Haley was an opportunistic infection whose moral compass only pointed towards what's best for Nikki Haley. Well, so far, 4,356,256 Republicans turned out to vote for her and not Donald Trump. A lot of them after Nikki Haley dropped out. So what does that translate into come November? Well, who voted for Nikki Haley? Mostly Republicans. I know there were some Democrats who crossed over to vote for her, but these were mostly Republicans. These are voters who agree with Trump on the substance, but not the style. A style of Donald Trump's that resulted in January 6, 4 years of permanent chaos, and a gloves-off approach towards those you disagree with and disapprove of. In Trump's case, style eventually became substance. He pretty much accomplished nothing his first 4 years other than cutting taxes for the richest 1% and picking a court that eventually overturned Roe. Trump is mostly about style, how he conducts himself. And how he conducts himself is criminal. It is a style of governing that I would assume most Americans don't approve of. There's a reason people voted for Haley. They basically wanted her to do everything Trump promised to do, cut taxes, deregulate, fight this fictitious war against migrants, and ease up on the push for alternative energy. The only difference between the two, Haley is not a criminal. Donald Trump is. And she probably had a much better chance of keeping all the promises she made if, God forbid, she ever became president. She also, if she had gotten the nomination, had a much better chance of beating Joe Biden in the general than Donald Trump has. Trump is not going to win in November. Nikki Haley, however, all the polling suggests she could beat, that she'd be very tough for Joe Biden to beat. She is a horrible, horrible human being. A proud union buster. She's a union buster, and she's proud of it. She famously said that as governor of South Carolina, we don't want unions down here. She said unions infect the workplace. Therefore, she is a disgrace. She couldn't bring herself to say the Civil War was about slavery. So, what is going on inside that tiny pea brain of hers? Nikki Haley's endorsement of Trump this week is all about 2028 because she's a fool. Her political calculus is Donald Trump loses in November, and she thinks she immediately becomes the heir apparent to the Republican nomination with Wall Street right behind her, specifically J.P. Morgan's Jamie Dimon. Wall Street hates unions, so they love union buster Nikki Haley. But here's the problem for Nikki Haley. She's working off a 10-year-old playbook when Republicans were very good about rewarding the candidate whose turn it was. She thinks 2028 will be her turn, like it was McCain's turn in 2008. I don't know if you remember, but John McCain ran against George W. Bush in 2000. It was a nasty campaign. He came in second. 8 years later, it was John McCain's turn. And he got the nomination because in the end, he was a loyal Republican foot soldier who swallowed his pride, endorsed George W. Bush, and he was rewarded in 2008 when it was his turn. Mitt Romney in 2008 was a loyal foot soldier. He lost the nomination to John McCain, and by 2012, it was generally agreed upon that it was his turn, and he got the nomination. But then things changed. In 2016, Trump took over the Republican Party. There's no more playbook for anyone who's loyal to the party. There's only loyalty to Trump. And loyalty to Trump means not eyeing the presidency in 2028, because we all know if elected, God forbid, in 2024, no matter what the what is it, the 22nd Amendment? I think. I'm probably wrong. No matter what that amendment says, Donald Trump is going to run in 2028. What Nikki Haley is naively betting on right now by endorsing Trump is that there's still going to be a Republican Party after Donald Trump loses in November. Now, if Donald Trump somehow wins in 2024, the Republican Party as we knew it is officially done. If he wins, the Republican Party is over. There's no turning back. It officially becomes a full-bore, authoritarian, fascist, white, ethno-nationalist party that answers solely to one man, Donald Trump, and maybe some members of his idiot family. However, the more likely scenario is Trump loses in November. And of course, he refuses to concede, and the Republican Party then folds in on itself with fighting among each other that I have no doubt will become physical. When Trump loses, the violence will be Republican on Republican. They will hurt one another the same way the mafia primarily only hurts their own. When Trump loses, there will be a brutal civil war inside that party as Trump loyalists scramble to retain power following a leader who's proven himself unelectable. So, if Nikki Haley thinks 2028 will be her turn, if she thinks she can play it real smart right now, be a loyal Republican foot soldier, get in line, endorse Trump, take back every bad thing she said about him 2 months ago, if she thinks that after Trump loses in November, that there will be a party waiting for her 4 years from now, then Nikki Haley is even dumber than I thought she was. And I don't think Nikki Haley could be dumber than I know she is. There is karma waiting for the Republicans after November. The karma in all this will be what the Republicans threatened to do to our country in the embrace of Trump will instead be visited upon themselves after November. After he loses, we'll be fine. Republicans, they're the ones who need to be frightened of other Republicans. Remember Jim Jordan? I hate this shirt. Remember Jim Jordan running for Speaker? Remember how all those death threats that were phoned in to Republicans in the House who wouldn't vote for Jim Jordan? That was a preview, a foreshadowing of what's going to happen after November when Trump loses and all those mindless dweebs start jockeying for power. Look at House Republicans right now. The partisan bickering, they cannot govern unless Hakeem Jeffries and the Democrats step in. Trump, I promise you, is going to lose in November. I know he won't accept defeat, and by refusing to concede this time around, he will bring the entire party crashing down on him and with him. Look at this Republican Party. All that's left now, with Nikki Haley endorsing him, all that's left are these so-called loyalists. But they're only really loyal to themselves. They only act out of self-interest and, of course, fear. They are afraid of Donald Trump. But come November, once Trump is no longer to be feared, once he proves himself unelectable, the binding that has been keeping this party together since 2016 becomes completely unglued, just like all the members of that party. They're all unglued. They're sniffing glue, but they're unglued. However ugly you think this country would become if Trump wins in November, which isn't going to happen, there will be an ugliness exponentially more gruesome visited upon members of the Republican Party after he loses. They will do horrible things to each other. Horrible things to each other. After the Democratic governor of Colorado, Jared Polis, signed a new law mandating teachers refer to students by their desired pronoun, the Colorado Republican Party this week officially declared that parents should pull their children out of all Colorado public schools. Insanity. In an official statement, the Colorado Republican Party accused Democrats of trying to turn children, quote unquote, trans because of the pronouns. The party said this new bill, ordering teachers to recognize a child's preferred pronoun, is an attack against the family, adding it's all part of the socialist indoctrination trying to convince kids that government knows best. Well, government certainly knows better than these medieval monstrosities who call themselves Republicans. Hey, kids, if you want to know who you should trust, Republicans or your government, trust the government. To wit, in a 4-1 vote, the Sarasota, Florida School Board this week rejected a new federal regulation that forbids discrimination based on gender identity. The vote was in direct defiance of President Biden's decision last month to expand Title IX protections for students to include gender identity discrimination. It was Joe Biden's ruling last month that prompted the Sarasota, Florida School Board to pass this resolution that states sex is defined as either male or female, and that it is not fluid, can't be changed or altered. By rejecting Joe Biden's new federal regulation, the Sarasota, Florida school system now risks losing $50 million a year in federal subsidies for programs that benefit low-income students like free lunches and free breakfasts. That's how much these Republicans care about the family. They will let students starve to protect them from preferred pronouns. The resolution was introduced by Sarasota, Florida School Board member Bridget Ziegler. Remember her? One of the founders of Moms for Liberty. Moms for Liberty is listed by the Southern Poverty Law Center as an anti-LGBTQ hate group. They're a hate group. Bridget Ziegler was forced to step down from Moms for Liberty back in December of last year after news broke that she and her husband, then chairman of Florida's Republican Party, Christian Ziegler, news broke that she and her husband, Christian, cruised bars looking for women to engage in threesomes. One woman ended up accusing Christian Ziegler, that would be Moms for Liberty's Bridget Ziegler's husband. One woman who they had a threesome with accused Christian of rape. Those charges earlier this year were dismissed. However, Christian is now up on charges of video voyeurism, non-consensually recording sex with the woman who accused him of rape. Bridget Ziegler, according to the Florida Center for Government Accountability, according to the Florida Center for Government Accountability, police reports looking into the rape allegations against her husband, Christian, who, remember, was chairman of the Florida Republican Party until earlier this year. Police reports reveal that the Zieglers aggressively pursued women to engage in their sexual escapades. Police in Florida reportedly found numerous videos on Christian Ziegler's phone of his wife and other women engaging in sexual activity. Florida police reportedly have no idea if the women knew they were being recorded as they engaged in sexual activity with the Zieglers. Christian Ziegler would reportedly go to bars and surreptitiously photograph women, then text their pictures to wife Bridget to see if Bridget wanted to have sex with any of these women. In text messages between the married couple, if Bridget Ziegler didn't like the way a woman looked, she would suggest her husband, quote unquote, hunt for someone new. While Bridget Ziegler was allegedly having sex with women, as her husband Christian watched and videotaped, she was also working with Florida Governor Ron DeSantis to help pass Florida's infamous Don't Say Gay bill. Help me out. Are lesbians gay? I'm just curious. And until Bridget Ziegler's husband, Christian, was accused of rape and their threesomes were exposed, Bridget Ziegler worked for the conservative nonprofit Leadership Institute. She worked for the Leadership Institute, where she was paid to train like-minded conservative mothers how to run for their local school board, because that's what America needs. More women having lesbian sex so their husband can videotape them, while at the same time getting on a school board and stigmatizing gay children. By the way, Bridget Ziegler still sits on the Sarasota, Florida school board, but why shouldn't she? She's a Republican. If Donald Trump can sit in the Oval Office on January 6th, eating a cheeseburger, watching Fox as his minions storm the Capitol, and not order them to stop no matter how many times he was asked. If he can do that, and fewer than 4 years later becomes the presumptive nominee of the Republican Party, why would Bridget Ziegler stop persecuting members of the LGBTQ community when she herself is allegedly a lesbian? These people have no concept of shame or accountability, at least for themselves. They have no trouble shaming other members of the LGBTQ community. They have no problem calling for accountability when it's the police rounding up people of color or poor people. But when it comes to themselves, we're Christian. We forgive ourselves, right? Hate the sin, love the sinner. No, I hate the sinner and I love the sin, because there would be no sin without the sinner. So David Feldman hates the sinner, loves the sin. Can't have sins without sinners. I will continue. This is the infamous Appeal to Heaven flag. You've heard about it this week. I talked about it months ago. The Appeal to Heaven flag stands outside Speaker Mike Johnson's office. It is the same flag that was carried into the Capitol on January 6 by insurrectionists looking to kill Nancy Pelosi, the previous occupant of Mike Johnson's office. And now, an Appeal to Heaven flag stands outside his door. When asked about the Appeal to Heaven flag, Mike Johnson, according to the Associated Press, said criticism of the Appeal to Heaven flag was, quote unquote, contrived. Johnson went on to say, quote, "It's nonsense. It's part of our heritage. We don't remove statues and we don't cover up things that are so essential to who we are as a country." Really? You don't cover up things that are essential to who we are as a country. That's why in Florida they can't teach critical race theory, because we don't hide our past. You effing piece of... all right. Anyway, if you're a longtime listener to this podcast, you might have heard me talk about the Appeal to Heaven flag at the beginning of the year, when we were just beginning to learn just how bat guano crazy our new speaker is. The Appeal to Heaven flag is part of our history. So says our speaker. He says it's like those Civil War statues people like David Feldman want torn down, right? He just said we don't get rid of our heritage unless it's critical race theory. So he said the Appeal to Heaven flag is like those statues people want torn down. And that's a pretty accurate comparison, because just like those Civil War statues that need to be melted down, the Appeal to Heaven flag is also a symbol of white Christian nationalism. Just like all those statues celebrating Confederate soldiers, the Appeal to Heaven flag, you got that right, Mike Johnson. The Appeal to Heaven flag is a symbol of white Christian nationalism, just like those statues honoring Robert E. Lee. That's precisely why the Appeal to Heaven flag was carried through the Capitol on January 6. But it's more than just a symbol of white Christian nationalism. It's a symbol of white Trumpian nationalism. You might remember I talked about Dutch Sheets. That's his name. And I think that's also what he wears at his meetings. White Dutch sheets with 3 holes in them and pointy hats. Dutch Sheets. He is considered the religious leader behind January 6. He is the Christian nationalist who many of the insurrectionists seem to have quoted and followed. Dutch Sheets is one of the leaders of the new, if you remember 5 months ago, I had trouble pronouncing this, Apostolic Reformation. He is a leader of the new Apostolic Reformation. Marjorie Taylor Greene, Turning Point's leader Charlie Kirk, Lauren Boebert, and our speaker, Mike Johnson, all say they subscribe to this movement. Now, the new Apostolic Reformation is a belief system. It's like Antifa. In other words, there's no formal organization behind the new Apostolic Reformation. It's what people believe. The same way Antifa is against fascists, but there's no Antifa headquarters. There's no leader of Antifa, despite what Republicans want you to believe. The new Apostolic Reformation, in a way, is led by Dutch Sheets. Not formally, though. It is a belief in getting rid of separation of church and state and turning the American government into an extension of Jesus Christ. This belief includes what Dutch Sheets calls the Seven Mountain Mandate. Dutch says society has 7 mountains that Christians must conquer. And those 7 mountains are family, religion, education, media, arts and entertainment, business, and government. Dutch, you have control of the board. Which category? I'll pick arts and entertainment for 50. Okay. To put it simply, the Appeal to Heaven flag symbolizes the belief that America must become a Christian nation. It is a call for holy war, which is why it was carried throughout the Capitol on January 6. This is dangerous, incendiary stuff, very flammable. Dutch Sheets believes in what is called intercessory prayer. Intercessory prayer. And that means people who follow him must pray to Jesus for the souls of Americans who don't believe in Jesus. It's kind of like when the Mormon Church began baptizing Jews who died in the Holocaust. The arrogance behind this is, we know best. You don't see it. We pity you, but don't worry, we're going to pray to Jesus for you. We'll even baptize your dead. What that creates in their fevered minds is the idea that America is destined to become a Christian nation because through intercessory prayer, all of us, Christian or not, have been praying to Jesus through these surrogates. Therefore, there's no reason America shouldn't be turned into a Christian theocracy. We've already prayed for you. I know you don't believe in Jesus, but we've already prayed for you, so you might as well accept the fact that this is a Christian nation. This is crazy people trying to control others by convincing themselves they're trying to help. That's what the followers of Dutch Sheets truly believe. And this makes them really dangerous. This is the trick religion always plays. Now, as an American, let me tell anybody who's religious out there, don't convert the dead. And don't pray for anybody. We don't need your prayers. In fact, we need you to stop praying and start dealing with the here and now. I also need you to be less judgmental of others and more judgmental of yourself. You hear me? Less judgmental of others and more judgmental of yourself. Take a good, long, hard look in the mirror and fix yourself. Shame yourself, not others. Apparently, you think your God is forgiving, but only of you. The rest of us deserve the death penalty. But when you screw up, or when your Messiah, Donald Trump, has unprotected sex with a porn star right after his wife gives birth, what do you say? Oh, no. We love sinners. It's all about hating the sin, but not the sinner. You need to do what David Feldman does. You need to love the sin and hate the sinner. Because without the sinner, there is no sin. Stop judging others. Stop judging the LGBTQ community. Look in the mirror and judge yourself, Sarah Huckabee Sanders. Look at how your family turned out. Look at how the state of Arkansas is doing right now. Highest infant mortality rates, lowest test scores. Judge yourself, not others, because you, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, are a failure. The Appeal to Heaven flag wasn't just carried on January 6th. It was also a flag that was carried after January 6th. And there was also another flag that many Stop the Steal sympathizers flew after January 6th in the lead up to Joe Biden's inauguration. So there was the Appeal to Heaven flag, but others were told to fly the American flag upside down in the hours leading up to Joe Biden's inauguration. It was a distress call to protest a stolen election. If you flew your flag upside down, it meant you believed that Joe Biden stole the 2020 presidential election. And one of the people who flew his flag upside down after January 6th and before Joe Biden's inauguration was Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito, he who wrote the Dobbs decision overturning Roe 2 years ago. Because a heartbeat is life. Unless it's a death row inmate, then kill him. And here's a gun, and use it if somebody forces you to stand your ground. Samuel Alito said it wasn't his idea to fly the American flag upside down outside his home. As you know by now, he blamed his wife, Martha. Seen here in this picture, they look like a very happily married couple. It's like Ginny and Clarence Thomas, right? Both justices, whenever I see them with their wives, they look so happy that they picked the right partner for the rest of their lives. Samuel Alito, a dutiful husband, blamed his wife, Martha, for the flag flying upside down. Back in 2021, this didn't get published in the Washington Post, but it is being published now. A reporter knocked on the Alito's door and said, "Why are you flying the American flag upside down?" And Martha Alito explained there was a dispute with one of her neighbors. I'm not making this up. Allegedly, one of her neighbors called her the C word, and I don't mean conservative. Allegedly. A neighbor allegedly called her the C word, and allegedly Alito's wife is the C word. I'm just reporting the news. Now, according to new reporting in the Washington Post, right after January 6th, Samuel Alito, and this was before he wrote the Dobbs decision, his neighbors in Washington posted anti-Trump yard signs filled with profanity. And some of the signs were directed at Justice Alito. And the sign said, "You are complicit." Okay. Well, as I said, a reporter from the Washington Post tried to interview Martha Alito in 2021 before the inauguration, asking, why is your flag upside down? And Martha Alito allegedly began screaming at the reporter. They were on the driveway of their home. Martha Alito began screaming at the top of her lungs, allegedly at the Washington Post reporter, as Judge Samuel Alito kept muttering, "Honey, Martha, get in the car. Get in the car." Allegedly. This is what has been reported, that a reporter from the Washington Post knocked on the Alito's door. Martha answered, and one thing led to another, and Martha and Samuel Alito were on the driveway, and Martha was screaming allegedly at the top of her lungs at the Washington Post reporter, and Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito was muttering, "Get in the car, Martha. Martha, get in the car. Get in the car, Martha." Yeah. And so Samuel Alito, he's been emailing the New York Times, and he wants us to believe it was Martha's fault, not mine. Basically told the New York Times, "I can't control this woman." And that's hard for a conservative anti-abortion zealot like Samuel Alito not to be able to control Martha. I mean, the guy who overturned Roe so that Republicans could control women's bodies, he can't even control his own wife. Martha, get in the car. Martha, stop screaming at the reporter and get in the effing car. See, he can't control Martha, so he overturns Roe v. Wade a year later. So at least there are some women who he can control. And so Samuel Alito wants us to believe it was innocent when they flew the American flag upside down. But as I said earlier, this was in the lead up to Joe Biden's inauguration. It was after January 6th, right? And flying the flag upside down post-January 6th symbolized you were still part of the Stop the Steal movement. You still believe Joe Biden stole the election. Maybe not the best look for a Supreme Court justice. Maybe not the best look. You know, you got to rule on some of these issues. Maybe not the best look for Samuel Alito to fly his flag upside down outside his home in solidarity with the insurrectionists as all of Washington, D.C. is in lockdown trying to inaugurate Joe Biden without any more incidents. We're talking about a Supreme Court justice showing solidarity, flying his flag upside down only days after the worst attack on our nation's capital since the War of 1812. Even Lindsey Graham this week said Sam Alito was not exercising good judgment. And he's in the judgment business. Now, the New York Times reports that the Alitos flew an appeal to heaven flag outside their vacation home in Long Beach Island, New Jersey, as recently as last summer. Now, certainly a Supreme Court justice like Samuel Alito is entitled to express his religious and his political views, but he's not allowed to combine the two. And that's precisely what an appeal to heaven flag is. It is, by its very definition, calling for the erasure of the wall, separating church and state, and then conquering the mountain of government by turning America into a Christian nation. As Lindsey Graham said, Alito was exercising bad judgment, and we expect good judgment from those who sit on the Supreme Court. But why would you expect good judgment from Samuel Alito, who overturned Roe v. Wade 2 years ago? So, what is the story with Samuel Alito? I won't talk about the unethical fishing trips he took with conservative donors. That's for another conversation. Is he an apostolic Christian? Is he a follower of Dutch Sheets? Why is he waving the appeal to heaven flag outside his vacation home? Well, Alito is a Catholic. So is Supreme Court Justice Amy Coney Barrett. She's a Catholic. But she was also a handmaiden inside People of Praise, a charismatic Christian group, non-denominational. So there are Catholics who are, shall we say, evangelical curious. There are Catholics who, despite the teachings of the church, there are Catholics who believe in the seven mountains. There are Catholics who want to knock down the wall between separation of church and state, even though the Catholic Church expressly forbids priests from holding elective office to protect the separation of church and state. Father Robert Drinan was a Catholic priest, a rarity, who is one of two Catholic priests elected in the history of the United States to the House of Representatives. Father Robert Drinan represented the 3rd and then the 4th Congressional District in Massachusetts. In 1980, Pope John Paul II ordered all Catholic priests to leave elective office, and Father Drinan obeyed the Pope and gave up his congressional seat, which ended up getting filled by Barney Frank, the first openly gay man ever to serve in the House. So, while the House and Senate are lousy with ministers, the Catholic Church has been very clear about maintaining a separation of church and state. There are no priests who are allowed to serve in Congress because Catholic doctrine supports a separation of church and state. Probably has something to do with the fear of being called a papist. When John Kennedy was running for president, there was fear that he was going to take his orders from the Pope. So the Catholic Church has been very insistent on maintaining a wall between church and state. So what is Samuel Alito, a Catholic, doing? What is he not thinking flying an appeal to heaven flag outside his vacation home? A judge who sits on the Supreme Court promises to keep his political and religious beliefs to himself. Otherwise, the Supreme Court loses even more legitimacy than it already has. This is precisely why our Supreme Court is compromised. People like Samuel Alito and Clarence Thomas. When you take gifts from right-wing donors, when you go on expensive fishing trips, Samuel Alito, when your ethics are questionable, it should come as no surprise that you compromise the court in other ways, like flying an appeal to heaven flag outside your home in direct violation of our sacred wall between church and state, which is spelled out in the First Amendment. Right? The Establishment Clause of the First Amendment. I know separation of church and state isn't in the Constitution. The Establishment Clause is in the First Amendment. Democrat Dick Durbin is chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee. Dick Durbin is also the name of Clarence Thomas's favorite porn star. Two different guys, though. Senator Dick Durbin is reportedly trying to talk with Chief Justice John Roberts about Samuel Alito's flagrant disregard for impartiality, as well as separation of church and state. And Dick Durbin, along with other Democrats, is also demanding that Samuel Alito recuse himself from any decisions where the Supreme Court must rule on January 6 related cases. Do you think Judge Alito is impartial if he's flying the flag upside down right after January 6? And if he's flying an appeal to heaven flag, the same flag that many of the January 6ers carried into the Capitol? If he's flying one of those flags, do you think for 1 second that Judge Alito is going to be impartial when he's hearing cases related to January 6? 330 January 6ers have been convicted on charges of obstructing a government proceeding. They're doing time. 330 January 6ers right now are doing time for obstructing a government proceeding. They were convicted based on a 2002 law that the Supreme Court is about to rule on to determine whether that specific law can be applied to the January 6ers. They're appealing. The 330 January 6ers are appealing to heaven. If Alito's sitting on the bench, they're appealing to heaven. They've already had oral arguments on this obstructing a government proceeding law and whether or not it can be applied to the 330 January 6ers who've been convicted. During oral arguments, both Alito and Clarence Thomas expressed doubt that they would uphold these convictions, suggesting that the people who stormed the Capitol were not obstructing a government proceeding. At one point during oral arguments, Alito said the protesters outside the Supreme Court that day were no different from the people who stormed the Capitol. He said, are the people protesting outside our court today, are they obstructing a government proceeding? He asked. In his questioning, he saw no difference between the people who stormed the Capitol on January 6th and the protesters who were outside the Supreme Court that day. Yes, people armed with knives, guns, bear spray, looking to hang the vice president and the speaker, literally obstructing a government proceeding, the certification of a presidential election, and it did get obstructed. It was delayed by hours. How could they possibly be guilty of obstructing a government proceeding just because they succeeded in obstructing a government proceeding? The presidential election of 2020 wasn't officially certified on January 6th. It had to be certified early in the morning on January 7th because they had to clear out the Capitol, clear out all the people who Samuel Alito and Clarence Thomas seemed to suggest during oral arguments were merely there to protest and not obstructing a government proceeding. You saw what happened on January 6th when the entire Senate and House of Representatives has to run for cover, when you can't certify the presidential election as mandated on January 6th and have to certify it early morning January 7th. How is that not obstructing a government proceeding? Clarence Thomas, of course, during these oral arguments, seemed to agree with Alito. Another case before the court, of course, is presidential immunity. When did they have those oral arguments? What was it, April 22nd? Was that when it was? And they still can't make up their mind as to whether or not a president has immunity, ex-president has immunity. If you remember, the court heard arguments back in April on whether Donald Trump, as a former president, could be charged with crimes committed while in office. Now, by the way, I have some good news about this. That's going to make you, if you keep listening, I'm going to make you very happy. Look, we all know the court isn't going to grant Trump absolute immunity. But they are doing a terrific job delaying the inevitable so that special counsel Jack Smith can't proceed with his Washington, D.C. election interference trial until after the 2024 presidential election, when there may not be a criminal justice system left. What could any objective, impartial observer conclude when Justice Clarence Thomas's wife, Ginny, helped organize the Stop the Steal rally on January 6? What would you conclude when you read the fevered text messages that Ginny Thomas sent to White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows in the lead-up to January 6, urging him not to fire Sidney Powell, telling him to tell President Trump not to concede the election because this election is a battle between good and evil? What would you conclude after learning that the only Supreme Court justice who voted against turning those text messages over to the January 6th committee was Clarence Thomas? What would you conclude when you consider that John Eastman, the lawyer who dreamed up the false elector scheme, served as Clarence Thomas's law clerk and remains a close friend of Ginny Thomas? He stays in close contact with the loving couple. What would you conclude when you also consider Justice Samuel Alito's apparent sympathy for the Stop the Steal movement, flying an Appeal to Heaven flag, flying the American flag upside down in solidarity with Donald Trump's lie that the 2020 presidential election was stolen by Joe Biden? What would you conclude about these two justices? Well, Rolling Stone magazine asked this week, quote, "Are there insurrectionist sympathizers on the Supreme Court?" That was the headline alongside a picture of Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito. Well, are there insurrectionist sympathizers on the Supreme Court? If I were to have Alito and Thomas on this show, they would insist, and you could put them, you could give them a lie detector test, and they'd pass it. They would insist that they're not insurrectionist sympathizers because obviously during oral arguments earlier, they don't see January 6th as an insurrection. They see it as a protest. When you have been poisoned, when your mind has been poisoned, like Clarence Thomas's mind and Samuel Alito, by religion, when you've been poisoned to believe that the 2020 election is the final battle between good and evil, as Ginny Thomas wrote to Mark Meadows, when you believe that this is a battle between good and evil, that means Jesus is on my side. And if it's a battle between good and evil, and if Jesus is on my side, and Joe Biden is about to be inaugurated, then obviously the election had to be stolen because Jesus is on my side, and the people who stormed the Capitol had God on their side because this election was about good versus evil. See how dangerous religion is? That's how religion clouds our Supreme Court's judgment. The same way religion has always clouded the judgment of anyone who seeks power and control. It's very hard to have power and control without your mind addled by religion. Donald Trump, we know he's not a religious man, but he sure knows how to use religion. And this is precisely why our founding fathers demanded religion, all religion, stay out of the public square. Given all this, it should come as no surprise that according to a new poll conducted by Bloomberg, half of swing state voters anticipate there will be violence around the time of our election. When you believe Jesus is on your side, as Trump has convinced so many, then the only way he could possibly lose is if the election was stolen. And that means Joe Biden, who, unlike Trump, actually goes to church. Joe Biden carries the rosary. In the Trump world, he's an illegitimate president and evil. Evil. So says Clarence Thomas's wife, Ginny. It's a battle between good and evil. So, why wouldn't you expect the demented morons who believe this to once again turn to violence after the November election doesn't go their way? Onward, Christian soldier. One of the ways Donald Trump incites violence is by accusing the Biden administration of inciting violence. Trump this week sent out a fundraising email insisting that when FBI agents searched his Mar-a-Lago residence for classified material, they were, quote, locked and loaded, ready to take me out. Now, you know that's garbage. I know that's garbage. Trump knows that's garbage. But all it takes is one nutcase to believe it. This is stochastic terrorism. Put something out into the ether, then wait for one of your crazies to act upon it, to freelance, with Trump being able to say, I had nothing to do with it. Marjorie Taylor Greene helped fuel this lie. This is her tweet. It comes from a right-wing troll who pored over recently unsealed documents in Trump's trial down in Miami, where he's charged with violating the Espionage Act after failing to turn over classified documents. Among the trove of memos and documents made public from the trial this week was a memo from our Justice Department instructing FBIs on how to conduct the search of Mar-a-Lago. And one of the memos instructs the FBI agents to, quote unquote, engage with the former president's Secret Service detail if there's any trouble trying to search Mar-a-Lago. Okay? The word engage. Trump, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and this right-wing troll seized on the word engage. We know, of course, engage means the FBI was instructed to get on the phone with the Secret Service, to engage with the Secret Service and make sure the Mar-a-Lago search was conducted without any incidents. But Trump, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and the right wing deliberately chose to define the word engage the way our military or the cops might define it, as in, we engaged in gunfire. Trump and Greene are intentionally misleading his followers, trying to paint the FBI as jackbooted thugs, which they are, but not when they're dealing with Donald Trump. I mean, the FBI killed Fred Hampton. They tapped Martin Luther King's phones, deep throat Mark Felt, supposedly the American hero, was charged with breaking into homes without a warrant. I mean, as I always say, what makes me hate Trump so much is he's forced me to defend people like Comey and the FBI. It's not a position I want to be in. But the FBI, in dealing with Donald Trump, has been anything but jackbooted thugs. But Trump had no problem sending out an email claiming the FBI stormed Mar-a-Lago, locked and loaded, prepared to take him out. And Marjorie Taylor Greene said they're trying to assassinate Donald Trump. They know this is garbage, but of the 350 million Americans out there, all it takes is one nutcase. This is why Special Counsel Jack Smith on Friday filed a motion asking Judge Eileen Cannon, who's presiding over the classified document case, he asked her to issue a gag order preventing Donald Trump from making any more incendiary and false claims about the FBI. Special Counsel Smith cited Trump's recent assertion, lie, it was a lie, it wasn't an assertion, that the FBI tried to, I don't even like saying the word, off him. And Special Counsel Jack Smith said such claims pose a serious threat to the safety of law enforcement officials. Despite Trump's assertions, and these are assertions also made by his lawyers, the FBI's search of Mar-a-Lago was not a raid. It was a court-ordered search. There was a warrant. The search was coordinated with Trump's attorneys who knew the day and time when it was going to happen. They knew exactly when it was scheduled to take place. In fact, the FBI picked the day and time so it wouldn't occur when Trump or his family, his younger son, would be on the premises. They spared Trump the humiliation of having his wife and son see this. Meanwhile, that Miami trial where Trump has been indicted for violating the Espionage Act, it's been delayed indefinitely as Judge Eileen Cannon, she's a Trump appointee, she ruled earlier this month that before she can set a date for the trial, there are far too many pretrial issues to be settled, especially how classified documents can be entered into evidence without violating government secrecy. And if these documents are so classified that you don't know how to enter them into evidence, it suggests that Donald Trump's crime was far worse than we know. If you can't figure out how to protect these files, these classified documents, apparently these documents were pretty important, which suggests that Donald Trump's crime was far worse. And of course, we're still waiting for the Supreme Court to issue a ruling on presidential immunity. The classified documents case supposedly can't proceed until the Supreme Court rules on presidential immunity. It is outrageous that the Supreme Court even took the presidential immunity case. They should have let stand the lower court's ruling, the D.C. Circuit Court's ruling, that former presidents can in fact be tried for crimes they may have committed while in office. It is outrageous how long the court waited to hear oral arguments on presidential immunity. And it is outrageous how long they're keeping us waiting to issue the ruling, which we know they're going to make. We know what they're going to say. They're going to say there is no such thing as blanket immunity for ex-presidents. What I predict this court is going to do, and I'm going to tell you why it's inadvertently a good thing. I'm going to end on some optimistic news. I'm going to explain why this court is so stupid that when they think they're helping Trump, they're actually helping Biden, okay? Here's what I think this court is going to do because they want to help Trump. They're probably going to kick this case back down to the lower court and force the lower court to, and this is garbage, but they're going to force the lower court to parse out what crimes Trump is accused of committing in his official capacity as president versus what crimes he's accused of committing that had nothing to do with his job as president. Right? Will be another delay tactic that this highly partisan Republican Supreme Court will deploy to guarantee that special counsel Jack Smith's 2 trials never take place before the election. A careful reading of these indictments shows that everything Trump is accused of doing in the lead up to January 6th had nothing to do with his official role as president. So there will be no legitimate reason to kick this case back down for clarification. But I predict they're going to do it anyway. Everything Trump is accused of in these indictments had nothing to do with his official role as president. There is nothing in the Constitution that gives the president authority to investigate voter fraud, real or fake. And there's nothing vested in Article 2? Yeah, Article 2, that allows the president to try to overturn an election that he has deemed unilaterally to be stolen. Okay? And as for the classified documents trial down in Miami, which is also on hold until the Supreme Court rules on presidential immunity, what the F? What the F is going on? That crime, violating the Espionage Act, mishandling classified documents, that crime was committed, allegedly, after Trump was no longer president. So where's the blanket immunity for, what does that have to do with crimes that what does the Miami case have to do with whether or not a president can be charged with a crime for something he did while he was president? They're trying to rule whether an ex-president can be charged with a crime for something he did while he was president. The mishandling of classified documents, not turning it over to the National Archives, hiding the boxes when the FBI was searching Mar-a-Lago, that was all done after Donald Trump was president. So what is the Supreme Court's ruling on presidential immunity have to do with Miami? I mean, is the Supreme Court going to rule that a former president can't be indicted for crimes they committed after they leave office? Again, the Miami trial, the Espionage Act, all of that was done after he was president. This is pure garbage coming from a garbage court. And it bears repeating. Had Hillary Clinton been elected in 2016, 6 out of the 9 justices sitting on the Supreme Court right now would have either been Obama or Clinton appointees. No Gorsuch, no Kavanaugh, no Amy Coney Barrett. When Charlemagne the God says, I'm not endorsing Biden because both candidates are trash, come on, Charlemagne. It's been almost a year since Donald Trump pleaded not guilty to 37 criminal counts of mishandling classified material. Trump's valet, Walt Nauta, has also been indicted, charged with removing boxes of classified material from a storage facility inside Mar-a-Lago. And by storage facility in Mar-a-Lago, I mean an unlocked bathroom. I'm not making this up. An unlocked bathroom. In anticipation of the FBI searching Mar-a-Lago, they got the warrant. The FBI was on their way. There is now, the reason Walt Nauta was indicted is because obstruction of justice, hiding those boxes. Who ordered him to hide the boxes? Now, according to the indictment, Trump was hiding several boxes. There were these superseding indictments. Trump was hiding several boxes from the FBI so they couldn't find them during the search. Newly unsealed court documents are now suggesting that there was a mad scramble taking place right after prosecutors decided to subpoena surveillance video of the storage area inside Mar-a-Lago. Surveillance video, which you can see here, clearly showing Walt Nauta moving some of the boxes before the FBI arrived. This is a screen grab from the surveillance video of Walt Nauta allegedly removing boxes of classified documents, allegedly, supposedly, on orders from Trump so the FBI couldn't find them during the court-ordered search of Mar-a-Lago. Now, newly unsealed documents are suggesting that when the FBI, after the search, subpoenaed the surveillance video, Trump was in Bedminster, New Jersey at his golf club. He realized there's video of Walt Nauta committing a crime, moving classified documents out of the supposedly secure storage area so the FBI couldn't find them. It is now suggested that the subpoena for the video created a mad scramble where Walt Nauta was sent back down to Mar-a-Lago and told to move the boxes back into the storage area and to do it in a way where you wouldn't be caught on video. They were going to turn, I guess, the surveillance video off. Nauta perhaps was ordered to move the boxes back into the storage facility so that if the FBI returned, the storage area during a second search would have the missing boxes, and the FBI would mistakenly believe that the boxes weren't moved, they just didn't see them the first time. Even though there is surveillance video of Walt Nauta clearly removing boxes from the storage area. Look, that's a little confusing, and I don't know if I explained that properly. And I don't know how interesting it was, that little vignette. I found it hysterical. By the way, Walt Nauta was a Navy officer assigned to the White House to serve as Donald Trump's valet when Trump was president. And Nauta stayed on at the White House when Joe Biden was president. And a couple of months into the Biden presidency, Walt Nauta was escorted off the grounds. Go. You're not allowed. We'll clean out your desk. You're leaving. There have been several accusations of sexual, I'm just going to say sexual harassment. I want to be careful here. And accusations of revenge porn. He was kicked out of the White House because several co-workers accused Walt Nauta of revenge porn and, let's just say, sexual harassment, and leave it at that. And he gets a phone call from Donald Trump, and he says, Walt, come down to Mar-a-Lago and work for me, work for your ex-president. You were my valet in the White House. Now you've been fired from the White House. You're compromised. You're desperate. Your reputation has been ruined. I only surround myself with people like you, so come down and work for me. And he did, and now I don't know if that will be brought up, if that trial ever happens, that he was removed from the White House. It would be nice to find out if Nauta, on orders from Trump, removed the boxes before the FBI searched Mar-a-Lago. It would be nice to learn if, after surveillance video captured Nauta moving the boxes on orders from Trump, whether or not Nauta then moved the boxes back into the storage room. But the chance, and this is good news, I'm going to end on this, the chances of that trial ever taking place before the election is zero. And here's the good news about all this. New polling seems to be suggesting that the Manhattan criminal trial going on right now might be giving Trump a temporary boost in the polls, because Trump has successfully turned the trial into one big campaign rally where he doesn't have to talk about the issues. He just plays the victim and appeals to every American citizen subconsciously who feels they have been screwed over by the criminal justice system. By focusing on whether or not Trump is a criminal right now, the American voter is being spared a much-needed conversation about what kind of president Trump was and what kind of president he will be. So let me offer up this large nugget of optimism. Maybe the court, and the more I think about it, not maybe, I think the court postponing the rest of these trials will end up hurting Trump in November. If the Manhattan trial finishes up next week or in 2 weeks, then we have the debate and the two conventions, and it looks like there's not going to be the D.C. trial or the Miami trial before Election Day, and now it looks like the trial in Georgia is way off schedule. The Trump's attorneys appealed a decision by McAfee, the judge in the Georgia case. He allowed Fani Willis to remain as the district attorney. And now, in their infinite wisdom, Trump's lawyers are delaying. They're appealing that ruling, so that trial is also on hold. I'm convinced, as I play this out in my head, this is a good thing. What happens when Trump is no longer a criminal defendant? Right? 5 more months. We get the Manhattan criminal trial out of the way. What if instead of him, the news cycle is what happened in court? Instead, it's Trump defending his 4 years as president. Right now, too many voters are mistaking Donald Trump for a martyr. I suspect a lot of voters don't care that he's a criminal. I suspect a lot of voters figure every politician is a criminal. Why is he being singled out? What if Trump, after the Manhattan criminal trial, no longer gets to play the victim and has to just present himself to the voter as a once and future president? I think that will do more damage to him in November than any guilty verdict. I think you forget the trials for the next 4 months, and Trump now has to present himself as a future president and not a victim. That's when his poll numbers really crater. The Wall Street Journal is reporting, for example, that putting Trump on trial is boosting his fundraising abilities. If you listen to the show for months, I've been telling you how bad his fundraising has been. Well, for the first time in this election cycle, Donald Trump had a better month than Joe Biden did. Why? Trump had a better April in fundraising than Joe Biden. Why? Well, last month, Trump's criminal trial in Manhattan began. Trump's criminal trial began on April 15th. And on that day, he raised $361,000 in individual donations. His campaign in April went on to a record $76 million in donations for April. That's $25 million more than Joe Biden raised in April. It marked the first time during this election cycle that Donald Trump outraised Biden. Now, that being said, Biden has way more cash on hand and is able to spend it on getting reelected. Trump is using up all his cash on lawyers, secreting money into an escrow account for Melania that she can draw from after the divorce. None of this money is being spent on getting Trump elected. So, one of the reasons I'm very optimistic is Biden will do better if Trump is no longer on trial for the next 5 months. Because then then Trump has to talk about what he's going to do as president and defend what he did as president. Election denier, how are we doing on time here? Okay. Electiondeniers.org monitors politicians running for or holding office who deny Joe Biden won the 2020 presidential election. Election deniers define an election denier as anyone who voted against certifying the election for Biden on January 7th, which took place hours after the January 6th insurrection. These are also the politicians who insist that election and subsequent elections have been stolen by Democrats, and they either refuse to concede their own defeat or a colleague's defeat. These are very dangerous Republicans, the election deniers. And according to electiondeniers.org, there are currently 170 election deniers serving right now in either the House of Representatives or the Senate. One of them is not Mitch McConnell, the Republican leader in the Senate. He's not an election denier. As early as December of 2020, McConnell declared Joe Biden the winner and congratulated him. But he's not going to be part of the Republican leadership next year. Mike Johnson, the current speaker, is a world-class election denier. He wrote an amicus brief, in support of a Texas lawsuit challenging the 2020 presidential election results in key battleground states that Joe Biden won. The Supreme Court, in the lead-up to the January 6th insurrection, refused to hear that case. There are currently 84 election deniers running for Senate or the House of Representatives. And part of being an election denier is also being a January 6th denier. Election deniers, as we've seen, call January 6th at worst a riot, at best normal political discourse. Mike Johnson is a January 6th January 6th insurrection denier. He's releasing those videotapes to prove that most of the people who were walking around the Capitol that day were peaceful. And right there, see that? This is just a random picture from January 6th as they're storming the Capitol. Right there where for those of you watching, the arrow is pointing to an appeal to heaven flag. Meanwhile, Donald Trump is running for president, not only insisting 2020 was rigged, but he's also beginning his rallies with the Star-Spangled Banner, a tape of a recording of the Star-Spangled Banner sung by the January 6th choir. Men serving time for storming the Capitol, and Trump is now promising to issue a blanket pardon for pretty much all of them. It starts with denying the election, then it's denying January 6th was an attack on our Capitol or on our democracy. Anything that's inconvenient for Trump or the Republicans, you deny. Man-made climate change, deny it. Deny that Trump's tax cuts for the rich added $8 trillion to our national debt. Deny that under Joe Biden, the crime rate is coming down. Deny that there's been a 50% drop in migrants trying to cross the border. And now that Biden's economy is on fire, with the stock market touching record highs. I played this 2 weeks ago. Here's what Trump is now saying about Biden's economy.
People are hearing, oh, our economy, his job numbers are fake. They're totally fake. They're fixed numbers. They're rigged numbers. Everything about them are rigged.
Right? Because it's incontrovertible that inflation is coming down, largest job growth in 60 years. So it's rigged. I lose the election, it's rigged. Biden's job numbers, his economy is on fire, that's rigged. Deny, deny, deny. I didn't rape E. Jean Carroll. She's not my type. I don't even know the woman. I didn't have sex with Stormy Daniels. I didn't arrange for hush money payments. And I'm going to testify to clear my name. I'm not going to testify because the gag order. Yeah, it's the gag order that prevents me from testifying. My conversation holding up arms shipments to Ukraine unless President Zelensky gives me dirt on Joe Biden, that was a perfect phone call. Nothing wrong. It was a perfect phone call. It wasn't illegal. This is precisely why Fred Trump sent Donald to military school. Back in the day, you young people don't know this, but back in the day when your son was a sociopath, you sent him off to military school. Young people don't know anything about this, but whenever I misbehaved, my parents said, David's out of control. If he doesn't get his act together, we're sending you off to military school. And that was terrifying. The thought of going to military school was terrifying. Fred Trump couldn't control Donald, so he sent his sociopathic son off to military school where Donald thrived. Only person ever sent off to military school, he loved it. He loved the hazing, the bullying, beating people up. That's a level of sociopathy even Fred Trump couldn't imagine. Then again, Fred Trump was a sociopath. Donald Trump didn't view military school as punishment. He loved military school. He loved the military. Not enough to serve in Vietnam, but he loved military school. People who served in Vietnam, according to Donald Trump, were suckers. And what Donald Trump learned at military school is might makes right, especially when your father can hire Roy Cohn to be your lawyer. And Roy Cohn taught him, might makes right, never apologize, never concede, never admit you lost. It's a sign of weakness. This is what sociopaths do. Roy Cohn, sociopath. And what we have now is a new loyalty test for any and all Republicans who want to be considered as possible running mates. Right now, anybody who wants to be vice president publicly refuses to say they will accept the results on Election Day if Donald Trump loses. Byron Donalds, Elise Stefanik, who's married to a gun lobbyist, Marco Rubio, J.D. Vance, and Tim Scott are all on Donald Trump's short list, and all of them have refused to say whether they will accept the final results in November. Elise Stefanik, whose husband is a gun lobbyist, Elise Stefanik has referred to the people arrested and convicted for their role on January 6th. She refers to them as political hostages. Now, Marco Rubio, he voted to certify the election for Joe Biden in 2020. Political expediency, because he wants to be vice president, now dictates that Marco Rubio refused to say whether he will accept the 2024 presidential election results if Donald Trump loses. Rubio says he's worried about presidential immunity. He says Trump's claim of absolute immunity, quote, raises a legitimate question. Marco Rubio says that we now live in a hyper-partisan climate and that presidents live in constant fear that after they leave office, they can be prosecuted. Yes, it happens all the time, Marco. All the time, a president leaves office, and the first thing that happens is he's indicted. It's never happened before until your Führer came along. So, I am very optimistic. I'm positive Biden is reelected. But how bad and how quickly can things get should Trump somehow win? The answer is really bad and way quicker than you can imagine. Not because of Trump, because of his legion of enablers in Congress and on the Supreme Court. You'd be amazed how quickly things will deteriorate if, God forbid, Trump somehow finds his way into the Oval Office. Jim McGovern is a terrific congressman from Massachusetts. Earlier in the week, the House was debating a bill on how to regulate cryptocurrency. House Republicans, I just mentioned this, they succeeded in passing a bill that is favorable to cryptocurrency. They passed a bill making cryptocurrency subject to regulation under the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, which is far less stringent than being regulated by the Securities and Exchange Commission. Anyway, they were debating this, and Jim McGovern took to the floor to complain about the absence of so many Republicans this week as they made their pilgrimages to the New York City criminal courtroom to show fealty to Donald Trump. Watch what new fear of Donald Trump has already begun to do to the speech or debate clause of the U.S. Constitution, which protects members of Congress, allows them to say pretty much anything they want when debating legislation. Here is Congressman Jim McGovern.
Republicans are skipping their real jobs to take day trips up to New York to try to undermine Donald Trump's criminal trial. No time to work with Democrats, but plenty of time to put on weird matching cult uniforms and stand behind President Trump with their bright red ties and like pathetic props.
Okay, that seems perfectly reasonable. Not unlike anything we've heard before coming from either side of the aisle. Please proceed. Democratic Congressman from Massachusetts, Jim McGovern.
Maybe they want to distract from the fact that their candidate for president has been indicted more times than he's been elected. Maybe they don't want to talk about the fact that the leader of their party is on trial for covering up hush money payments to a porn star for political gain, not to mention 3 other criminal felony prosecutions he's facing. Now, I understand why my Republican friends want to distract from Donald Trump. They don't want to talk about how Trump had the worst jobs record since the Great Depression, how he sold out our allies and empowered our adversaries. So they bring silly things like this to the floor to deflect blame and distract from the fact that they have no real vision, just division, and no real plans to make life better for the American people. And with that, I reserve my time.
And with that, I reserve my time. Seems perfectly fine, right? Did he say anything offensive? Well, Republican Jerry Carl, who represents Alabama's 1st Congressional District, was presiding over the House that day. And he decided that what Democratic Congressman Jim McGovern said about Donald Trump was too much. the Republican, Jerry Carl, presiding over the House, said listing Donald Trump's legal travails is an attack on the presumptive nominee's personality and character, and you're not allowed to do that in the House of Representatives. This is pretty scary. Watch.
And with that, I reserve my time.
The chair would like to remind members to refrain from engaging in personalities towards presumed nominees for the office of the president. The gentleman from Massachusetts reserves. The gentlewoman from Indiana is recognized.
And then the gentlelady from Indiana demanded that Jim McGovern's words get stricken from the record. There was demand that what he had said about Mein Fuhrer, just listing all the trials that he has in front of him this year, that it violated parliamentary rules because it was impugning the truth, was impugning the character of Donald Trump. And it went like this. And this is, watch this. This is with a Democratic president and a Democrat in control of the Senate, the Democrats in control of the Senate, and Republicans barely holding on to a majority in the House. This is the crap Republicans are pulling now.
The gentlewoman from Indiana reserves. Gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, a few moments ago, I was admonished for stating the simple fact that the former president was indicted by a grand jury and is on trial in a court of law. That's not my opinion. It's just the truth. So I have a parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman will state his inquiry.
Mr. Speaker, has the chair determined it's unparliamentary to state a fact?
The chair is not in a position to determine the veracity of remarks made on the floor.
Well,
that members must avoid personalities.
yeah, well, that's unbelievable. Last week during debate, a Republican member of this House said, and I quote, "Watch the former president of the United States being hauled into court day after day with a sham trial," end quote. He wasn't admonished. I just referenced the same trial, and I was. So, Mr. Speaker, I have to ask a further parliamentary inquiry.
The gentleman will state his inquiry.
Mr. Speaker, is it correct that members of Congress can mention the trial of the presumptive nominee for president, call it a sham, and question the integrity of the judge, but a reference to the mere existence of that same trial without any characterization that's out of order?
The chair will not issue an advisory opinion.
Well, one last parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Speaker. Is this restriction originally founded, at least in part, on the principle in Jefferson's manual that, quote, in Parliament, to speak irreverently or seditiously against the king is against order, end quote? Is that what this is about? I have Jefferson's manual here.
Members must avoid personalities in debates. The chair will direct members to Rule 17 in Section 370 of the House Rules and Manual.
Yeah. So it is, in fact, based on what's in Jefferson's manual. Mr. Speaker, Donald Trump might want to be a king, but he's not a king. He is not a presumptive king. He's not even the president. He's a presumptive nominee. And I know you're trying to do your job and follow precedent, but frankly, at some point, it's time for this body to recognize that there is no precedent for this situation. We have a presumptive nominee for president facing 88 felony counts, and we're being prevented from even acknowledging it. These are not alternative facts. These are real facts. A candidate for President of the United States is on trial for sending a hush money payment to a porn star to avoid a sex scandal during his 2016 campaign, and then fraudulently disguising those payments in violation of the law. He's also charged with conspiring to overturn the election. He's also charged with stealing classified information, and a jury has already found him liable for rape in a civil court. And yet, in this Republican-controlled House, it's okay to talk about the trial, but you have to call it a sham.
We take down his words.
It's okay to say the jury is rigged.
Mr. Speaker, I demand that his words be taken down.
It's okay to say the court is corrupt.
Gentleman will suspend.
But not Trump is corrupting the rule of law.
Indiana, to demand that his words be taken down. The gentleman from Massachusetts will be seated. The clerk will report the words.
And so the gentlelady from Indiana, Congresswoman from Indiana, I don't know who it was, I'll find out. She demanded that Jim McGovern's words get stricken from the record. They were stricken from the record, and Jim McGovern was forbidden from speaking for the rest of the day. He was disciplined. Rewind it. Rewind. That last clip is one of the most chilling clips I've played on the show. It is foreshadowing of what is in store for us if Donald Trump is in the White House with Republicans clinging to control of the House of Representatives. What do they have? A 2-vote majority now, and they're pulling this crap. This will be the end of anything resembling a republic. The House would rubber stamp anything Trump tells them to. You see the control that Trump has over Mike Johnson and this clown presiding that day and the gentlelady from Indiana. Well, that is, I would play that again if I were you, because that is what will be going on every day the House is in session if Donald Trump is president and Republicans keep control of the House. If we're lucky, that's what will keep going on. I mean, there is a jail inside the Capitol. The sergeant of arms can start arresting, despite the debate clause. If, however, if you were to make a wager on November's election, even money right now says the Senate will change hands and fall under Republican control, and the House will fall under Democratic control. I believe it's going to be tight in the Senate, but I think Democrats will hold on to the Senate, and I think they're going to get control of the House, and Joe Biden is going to get reelected. Michael Scherer, writing over at the Washington Post, says a political action committee under the direction of Speaker Mike Johnson has reserved $141 million worth of radio and television ads throughout the country to keep control of the House. There is money flowing into the Republican Party. There was a problem earlier in the year. Mike Johnson couldn't make it rain the way Kevin McCarthy could, but wealthy donors are stepping up. Mike Johnson, his political action committee, it's controlled by whoever is speaker controls that fund. Mike Johnson has $20 million more than Kevin McCarthy had back in 2022 for the midterms. Scherer says Republicans see 30 seats in the House in play, and most of them are either in California or New York. Democrats see as many as 50 House seats up for grabs. So, the most recent Economist YouGov generic congressional poll, it measures the popular vote for Congress. We're not going district by district. The generic poll shows Democratic congressional candidates leading Republicans in a generic race by 4 percentage points. That's a lot when it comes to a congressional generic poll. Remember, we elect our members of Congress district by district, and because of gerrymandering, it is conceivable for Republicans to keep the House with fewer popular votes than the Democrats. In 2010, Republicans kept control of the House with a 33-seat majority, but they lost the popular vote by 1.3 million votes. That's gerrymandering. Gerrymandering favors Republicans in the House, always, and a poll of generic congressional races must show Democrats winning by about 3 percentage points in order to suggest Democrats will flip the House. They have to overperform the popular vote to take the House, and it's looking like they're going to do that. I'm finishing with the House this morning because in the end, it's not about Donald Trump. It's about his enablers, and his enablers are in the House of Representatives, and the House of Representatives determines our nation's fate. All spending emanates from the House. The Constitution gave Congress way more power than any other branch. That's why Article 1 is about Congress. It is the number one branch. Why was Donald Trump a failure as a president? Well, he's a failure as a human being. In his first 2 years, he had a Republican House and a Republican Senate. And he was able to pass that massive tax cut for the richest 1%. And then in 2018, the Democrats took control of the House. Nancy Pelosi became Speaker. She ripped up his State of the Union, impeached him twice, and the only thing Trump accomplished in the final 2 years of his presidency was sending those thugs into the Capitol to try and hang Nancy Pelosi. So the House of Representatives is really important. In many ways more so than the Senate, although the Senate confirms the cabinet and judges. The House of Representatives, depending on what kind of majority the Democrats end up with, is or can be more important than the Supreme Court. The court can overturn Roe, but the House of Representatives and the Senate can pass a bill that overturns the court overturning Roe. Trump is not going to win. They have a lot of us scared that he's going to win. Again, we're about to enter a new phase. The Manhattan Criminal Court is not going to save us. If they find him guilty, he's going to appeal. If they acquit him, well, he's temporarily vindicated. The courts are not going to save us. As I said earlier, no more trials between now and Election Day is a good thing for the Democrats. Let Trump run on his presidency, not his criminal record. Let him run on his record as president, not his record as a criminal. He doesn't stand a chance when he has to defend his 4 years in office. If he somehow makes his way back into the Oval Office, we need the House of Representatives. You saw that clip of Jim McGovern being silenced. Again, it's one of the most chilling things I've played on this show. Imagine what that clip would be like if Trump were in the Oval Office. We also need to keep the Senate. If Trump wins, and he's not, if he wins, but he doesn't get the Senate, the Republicans don't get the Senate, and he doesn't have the House, he will not be doing anything for the next 4 years. But if this is inexplicably a wave election, if somehow Trump picks up steam and he wins the Oval Office and the Republicans win the House or the Senate, this country is over. It's not just Biden versus Trump. We have to watch the down ballot candidates. And it's why all of you living here in America need to get going and work to elect Democrats in the Senate, in the House, your state house, your city council, and your school boards. If you haven't been paying attention yet, these Republicans are all psychotic. And if we allow them to gain control, they're going to get us all killed. In the words of Ginny Thomas, this election is a battle between good and evil. I'm David Feldman, reminding you to stay strong and protect the weak. Thank you for finding me. If you want me to remain in your feed, the best way is for you to subscribe to my channel and hit the like button and do notifications. If you want to help me, the best way is by sharing this episode. If you think what I do is worthwhile, please forward this episode to your friends in an email, a text, on Facebook or Twitter. The only reason you're listening to me right now is because you heard about this show through a friend. I have no corporate underwriting. I'm not part of any podcast network. I'm not coming off a sitcom. I'm not famous. So if you support what I call this viral meritocracy, then share this episode. Nobody is going to help me other than you. Robert Smigel and Sam Cedar, and you. Leave a comment. I read all your comments. Thank you to Bob in the chat room for keeping the conversation civil. If you would like a transcript of this or past episodes, they're free. Go to shopdavidfeldman.com and hit the like button. Not hit the like button. Go to shopdavidfeldman.com and hit the transcripts menu. I've posted all the transcripts for the month of May over at Shop David Feldman. We are able to do it because of the idiots who go to Shop David Feldman and buy worthless crap like this Uncle Scam mug. And I think I'm giving away a free diploma to Harvard University. If you go to shopdavidfeldman.com for the next 24 hours, you can get download a Harvard University diploma. You just put your name right there. And anyway, and let me know if you'd be interested in attending a debate watch party June 27th. Again, I'm still making up my mind. I I'm not going to do it unless I know we could build an audio podcast out of it. That means I need to know that you're going to raise your hand and talk to me. I thought, well, maybe we'll have guests. And then I thought, you know what? It's good for me to meet the listeners and talk to them, and I think it would make for a good audio podcast. So the way I think this is going to work is we watch the debate together, then I hit the record button, and I take your calls. If you register, you don't have to attend via Zoom. There'll also be a phone number, so let me know. I think that covers everything, right? There was something. Oh, I know what I wanted to do. I want to thank the Super Chats. Thank you, iChalkin. Stay strong and protect the weak are words I've lived by for decades already. Keep on keeping on, David. You are a mensch. Highest compliment you can give somebody is calling them a mensch. Liam, we got some fat kids. They can miss. Oh, come on. Liam, we get it. She's a great sport, and I don't know who you're talking about. We get it, David. She's a great sport. Is that a reference, Liam, to, is this Liam McEnany? Liam M? We get it. She's a great sport. I think this is Liam McEnany. And J.C. Geibel. Lemon character blowing a big red heart. Thank you. Is Liam here? Let me just double check. Okay. All right. I'm going to go. Thank you all. I'll see everybody probably Monday. Thank you for putting up with my nonsense.